Hi, my name is host Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People, and this video is basically a response to the Y-Files video on simulation theory. His video got 7.6 million views. It has lots of graphics and music and stuff in it. It's well produced, etc. This video will have at most a couple of hundred views, but it's going to be a much better exposition on the topic because this gentleman makes a few different mistakes argumentationally here. Um, First, let me just say about this about simulation theory. The idea that because we are able to simulate things, that the simulation of an entire universe, uh, rendered somehow independently by each party, is is feasible. This gentleman did talk about in some part of this video the notion that it was mathematically, scientifically impossible to render so much stuff all at once. You'd have to have so much computing power. It doesn't matter how advanced your technology is, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's, of course, not actually a good reason to dismiss simulation theory at all. But there are some good, there is one main good reason, and I'll get into that in a second. But first, let's discuss the actually good reasons to believe in simulation theory if you're inclined towards that. So this gentleman talked about the Mandela effect, and that's not a good reason to believe in simulation theory. This guy talked about deja vu, and then most interestingly, I think he talked about quantum stuff. So as you may or may not know, if you shoot particles, electrons, let's say, through a slit, you get a clumping pattern that looks like particles are expected to. If you shoot waves through it, like photons, then you get a wave pattern with wave interference pattern, as you would expect to. But if you have two slits, then particles show a wave interference pattern that shouldn't be there. If you put a detector in front of it, the wave interference pattern goes away. And this is kind of what's known as retroactive causality or something named like that. The point is that on a quantum level, observation is key to determination, essentially. This gentleman positioned it as as evidence that there's an intelligence behind the functionality of the world, but it's really only evidence that observation is a heretofore unnamed, described, understood force in the universe, just like, say, gravity, or and I guess gravity's not a force. The weak and strong forces that bond different parts of an atom to one another. Anyway, the point is, we can explain all that quantum stuff with observation being a force. It doesn't require simulation theory. But I want to stop heading in that direction for a second and discuss good reasons to believe simulation theory makes sense. The number one reason to believe it is something quite contrary to what the gentleman said. He indicated that, people who are religious don't believe in scientifically proven things like evolution. Of course, if in fact it's simulation theory is correct, then we should dismiss evolution as the explanation for where species come from, right? There's no need for evolution to be simulated if we're in a simulation, and yet this guy insists that evolution is scientifically proven. The other reason to dismiss evolution is because every time we try to test evolution, it falsifies, and there's no explicit mechanism identified by evolutionary scientists to explain evolution, and the branching fossil record is inconsistent on a time frame level with the notions of evolution, etc. Lots of different reasons. I don't want to go into all that right now. But the point is, one good reason to believe in simulation theory is there's no good explanation for where species came from. And the fossil record shows a sequence of extinction events every 40 million years until the last extinction event 66 million years ago. It seems very much as though somebody's playing simulation Earth, simulation universe, and keeps having to start over because he can only get corals, and then he can only get fish, and then he gets dinosaurs, but he can't get any intelligent life because there are too many dinosaurs, etc. It makes intuitive resonance. It intuitively resonates as something somebody playing some kind of simulation might do, right? But the takeaway from that is, okay, so we don't know where species came from. The Cambrian explosion tells us that our conventional understandings of evolution is gradual change over time or nonsense. Punctuated equilibrium has been mathematically disproven. Genetic drift, mathematically disproven, etc. All these various attempts to explain speciation as change over time have been disproven. So we have to have some kind of explanation for where everything came from, how it came to be, why this fossil record looks like it does. And simulation theory is a much better explanation for that than God, because of the fact that the Earth appears to have gone through a sequence of failed attempts to get to human life. So before getting there, here's the problem with simulation theory, and the reason why we should have serious doubts about it. It is true that we can simulate things, and we simulated lots of things. We have The Sims, which is basically simulated people moving through a simulated world. But what we have no reason to believe we can simulate, and we should believe we cannot simulate, is consciousness. Consciousness is a phenomenon that links precisely and directly, and exclusively, I suspect, to biology. In other words, to attain consciousness requires both a physical and a metaphysical component that only individual biological creatures have. We already know how to generate new instances of conscious intelligence. It's by reproducing. But the thing about consciousness is it's self-aware, and it requires a body in order to afford an individual all the manners of attention that are necessary to qualify as conscious. And the biological identity, in other words, the biological self-interest, hunger, thirst, etc., that makes an individual's identity both self-aware and self-serving, which are necessary components to being conscious, right? So there's good reason to believe we cannot simulate that without creating biological creatures, and that's not simulation anymore. So to the extent that we are to believe that we are in a simulated universe, then we'd have to believe that only a few of us are participating in the simulated universe as, say, player characters, and that the rest of the people we're encountering are not actually conscious, but are merely simulated beings whose programming makes it difficult for us to distinguish between them and actual conscious people, but who actually are not themselves conscious. So if we want to believe in a world that's filled with non-player characters who have a limited amount of adaptability, variability, who are not human and are not self-aware, well, we'd have to additionally believe then that most animals are additionally simulated, etc. There's so much biological consciousness in the world, as we see it, as we understand it, that it's hard to imagine, and it displays so much of the unique qualities of actual independent agency, self-aware decision-making, etc., that it's hard to imagine it's hard to imagine that you can even imitate consciousness that effectively. And additionally, I would state that um, this gentleman pointed to sort of structural regularities or repeating structures within the universe, say the Fibonacci sequence or other mathematical things, underlying that we are able to map out and understand, um, that those commonalities are indicative of an intelligence simulating this. But the core issue is as follows. First of all, there's no reason to believe that just because there are repeating structures within the universe, patterns within the universe, etc., there's no reason to prefer simulation theory over any other explanation for that. And most importantly, the takeaway is this: that until there's good reason to believe that it's plausible, possible, conceivable for us to actually simulate intelligence, artificial intelligence, such that it is self-aware and conscious, then we should not believe that simulation theory is an adequate explanation for sure yet. Okay. Now, additionally, it's the equivalent of the speed of light. So this gentleman pointed out that some scientists and philosophers have posited that the speed of light is artificially inserted as a barrier to prevent humans from getting far away from the planet or something. But in other words, to limit the scope of the area needing to be simulated. That nothing is simulated until it's observed, and that the fact that that things aren't existent until observed is indicative of the fact that it's consistent with the idea of reality being rendered as triggered by observation, like in a video game, right? They don't simulate the entire world for everybody all the time. They just show you the parts that you're at and then simulate that. So the thing is that is how the universe works. In other words, all reality is predicated on observation. But that doesn't mean that just because reality operates in an efficient rendering fashion and like that doesn't mean that it's simulated. There's no linkage there whatsoever. There's no reason to conclude that. So the thing is, you might now ask, Eric, okay, having yammered on for 12 minutes and 40 seconds now about this subject, well, what is your position on it? Well, my position on it is we don't know the answer to the big cosmological questions. We don't know where existence came from. The Big Bang is an inadequate explanation. God is an inadequate explanation. We don't know where species come from. We know it's not evolution. That's easily falsified in myriad ways, as I have in multiple videos, and there's absolutely no good reason to believe it. Obviously, creationism is not an explanation. There's no reason to prioritize that. So we don't know. People have posited maybe like aliens brought us here, or we are aliens who came from another planet and crashed here and lost our technology or something. People have posited, hypothesized, speculated many possible notions, but the correct position on the matter is we have no fucking idea. Okay? So, and that's okay. What the world would benefit a great deal from is a lot more ambiguity tolerance and recognition of the fact that the best affirmation when we don't know is to affirm that we don't know, not to affirm something that's a maybe that we don't know. So anyway, our position should all be the same on these things. We don't know where existence came from, and we shouldn't believe in aliens until we have a good reason to think that anything can travel faster than light, rather than it being an actual structural fundamental limitation as per, what's it called? Well, in the same fashion that that logically impossible things expressed in language are expressed in language as logically impossible because of contradicting premises. And so, you can't get around that built-in structural limitation that's implicit to the nature of the mechanics of the thing itself, right? So anyway, what should your position be? And what should you tell other people who argue for meow, meow, meow? You should say, we don't know. Just because we can simulate things doesn't mean we can simulate consciousness. And there's good reason to think we can't. And that would seem to be a prerequisite to us existing in a simulated universe right now. So there you have it. And I know I'm not getting 7.6 million views, but this is a better video on the subject than the Y-Files video on the subject with his 2.71 million subscribers. However, I watched that video. I probably won't watch this one.